So now we're going to start to make the quarter square triangles. Now, this is done in 2 steps. Step 1 is to make the sheets of the 2 color fabrics. When you look at the illustration, you're going to see there are in fact 6 different sheets we're going to make, color combinations. We have 15 of each of our 10" by 3" pieces, and I'm going to do them in the order that it says. It says to take 5 of each. Here I'm making 2 sheets of a B-C combination, and I need 5 of each. So here's B and here's C. I'll just count out 5 and sew and then do that twice. So that's 2, 3, sorry, that's 2. This is 3 and 4, and then 5, which is going to make 1 of the 2 sheets. I'm going to repeat that for the second one so that I know I have the exact number of strips in each of my sheets and I won't run out of my colors. The colors are used in various combinations, so be careful to really pay attention to your diagram. This is 4, and then the 5th of each. And there's my second sheet. Now it says to make a B and an A combination. I only need 1 of those. Doesn't matter which end you start with. You just flip it around when it comes time to sew it with your 3rd fabric. This is 4. This looks like it's 5, and I probably have an extra one left over, only because I was probably cutting 6 double strips, so I didn't have exactly 5 on it. But just in case, I'll put it aside. So there's my 3rd one. My next one is going to be D and A, these 2. And I'm going to do 2 of these. A and D. And 5, and I do that one more time. Oops, wrong color. Pay attention. There's the D I'm using this time. A and D. 2, 3. Oops, wrong pile. 5, and I do have an extra left over, so I probably cut 16 because of the folded fabric. Now I'm going to do D, which is the one we just did, and E, which is purple. I seem to be missing some D's, but I'm going to so 2 sheets. Okay, that's fine. I'm supposed to be 5 of each, so I'm going to look for 2 more of those. I may just have them in the wrong pile. I'm going to have to cut a couple more strips of this one. So I'm going to put this one aside. I've got 3. I'll take the other 2 that I need, and I'm going to cut myself another strip of the light green, the fabric D, to complete that second strip. And now I'm going to go E and F. Here's E and here's F. And I need 2 of these. So I think you get the idea right now. I think when I come back, I'll show you all the sets sewn together and how we cut our rows, and then we get ready for our next step. See you in a bit. So I had 9 sheets of 10 strips sewn together. I've already cut these, but I want to show you how I did that. As you can see, I have a cutting mat that's a little small, so I'm going to fold it. This is not something I usually do, but I'll show you how to do it in case you want to do the same thing. There's a 1/4 inch seam in there. I can catch my nail and just push it over just so that I have a 1/4 inch. I need to have a straight fold so that I can square the top and cut my strips. The best way to do that now is to check by using the ruler. You have to look down on it to make sure that you've got things lined up right. If I line this ruler up, you can see through there with the seam between the red and the green and the white. I should be able to see my 1/4 inch marks on the outside edge. I don't, so I'm going to just pull that over just a little bit more. And that way I know I have a straight vertical and from which I can align everything. Let's try that again. So here's my line on the seam, and here are my 1/4 inch marks on the outside edge. So I know this is good. I also check over here to make sure that I'm straight, and it looks like I am. I'm going to move the ruler up just a little. All I want to do is square up this sheet. And you can see it was quite crooked, and that's because you're sewing strips together to strips, and it's hard to keep an alignment across the top. But now I know that I'm square to my seams. The next thing is to spin this around gently. I don't want to mess it up. And I'm going to cut from this direction, because again I'm looking through the ruler at these lines. 1, 2, 3 inches. Here's the corner of the sheet. Here's the bottom edge. I'm seeing glare, but I'm not sure if you are, but you can see the dark lines right, making that a nice right angle, and consistency at this end. I don't know for sure what's underneath. I know I'm careful when I do my sewing, so I'm assuming that everything's good. And the way to tell, of course, is to open it up. I don't want to see any bend, and it looks pretty straight. There's 3 rows from every sheet. There are a total of 9 sheets, so what we have now are 18 rows. One more cut, and then we'll move on to part 2 of the 1/4 square triangles. These original rows were 10 inches. We only need 9, so that extra 1 inch is going to give you what you need at the top and bottom, just to square up the rows properly. Alright, so there's all my strips cut. Next I'm going to check my illustration. I need to make 3 sheets using solids, some 2-color strips, switching colors, but using the same solid all along. So if I'm going to work on sheet 1, what I need are all my blue long pieces. So I'll just take them out of the pile here. These are 30 inches long, which is more than I need. I may trim a little bit because it might be awkward if it's too long, but here are all my dark colors. Sorry, my blue colors. I'll put these aside for the other 2 sheets. I just want to see how much longer they are than my strips. Make sure that I have these starting at the same place so that when I trim, I can trim them all at the same time. I don't need more than a 1/2 inch. I could use 1 inch. Now my first color I'm going to put down is the green and white. What is my green and my white? And when I sew them down, I can overlap a little bit at both ends. So you see I'm quite a bit longer than I need to be. I'm going to change that dimension for next time. I believe that these are 31, and I'm going to cut off 1, 2, 3, 4 inches. So they probably only need to be 27. That's because these are 10 by, now that there's a sewn there, by 2 3/4. They were 3, now they're 2 3/4. So that's 2 3/4 and 10, 2 7/5. That's 27.5 is all I really need, and I have 31, and there's hence the 4 inches. So let me cut that off. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't getting mixed up for something else, but I don't think it is. I think this is right. Goes in my scrap pile. We might use them later. And now I'm going to pay close attention to the illustration. I'm starting with the blue, and I'm sewing a green and white, but my first color on the illustration shows white. Very important. Don't flip it around or you're going to have the wrong orientation on your pieces. Do exactly what the illustration says. Another blue, another one, again starting with the white, another blue, and the third white, and green starting with white. Now I'm switching colors. Now I'm going to go to the light green and purple. And I'm going to need 3 of those. I have to take them out of the pile. And I'm starting with the light green color. I don't mix that up because it will change the direction of your quarter square triangles. So you're alternating. And the last one of this group. And now I'm switching to purples and blues. And I need 3 of those. And I'm starting with purple. And when I start sewing these together, I stop between each row and press, because you need to line up those grid pieces, and I'll show you how to do that when I start sewing. So this is the order of the going from the bottom to the top of sheet number 1. You're going to repeat this for sheet number 2 and 3. I have only shown you the first part of the sheet just so you can see what the start colors are. So let's sew the first few pieces so you can see how this goes, and then we'll turn the camera off after that. So here's my, remember I'm on the bottom. Important to remember because I don't want to accidentally flip this around and then have the wrong end. So here's my bottom piece, my next to bottom, right sides together. Because I have a 1/2 inch more than I need, I can put a 1/4 inch on both ends and sew that. Pressing the seams open. It's just easier to keep things flat when things are open. See, this little mini iron lets me get the toe right down into that seam, so I know I'm going to be flat. But I'll flip it around too, just to make sure. I can feel it, that I'm flat with my fingers as I open the seam. And then just check that everything is completely flat. Now I'm going to sew the next color on, which is another solid. And then I'm going to show you how to line up that second. So I have the first 3 strips sewn together. I'm about to sew the 4th one. Pay attention before you sew the 4th one. Remember, we're at the bottom and we're supposed to have purple at this end. So I'm going to swing this around, because I'm going to be sewing this block onto this top seam next. I don't pin it. What's important when I'm sewing is that these line up. So as I'm going along, I'm always checking that this lines up. If I'm a little bit off, then I just adjust and ease it or slightly stretch it if necessary to make sure that I'm getting this even line. And that's how you're going to get an even grid, and you'll be able to cut these apart easily as well. Let me sew this up and you'll see how it looks. So you can see that this little seam is exactly lined up. Before I go too far, I make sure it's lined up. Yeah. I just hold it down at this end. I haven't had to adjust any of these. No stretching and no easing. Everything just fits exactly. So this is sheet 3. I've already made the other 2 sheets and cut them into their final units. I'm going to show you how I did the cutting. The sheet has strips of 2 colors. And has, of course, your solids. This particular sheet has all the purple in the solids, which is my fabric E. I'm upside down compared to the illustration. The illustration says make your first cut through your white squares. White is my fabric B. Notice on the corner, I'm not going to get right to the edge. I have a seam allowance on the outside edge of the sheet. However, every other square goes right through its diameter. And that's the first cut I'm going to make. Now I can cut between this one. Now because my sheet is a little bit shorter, I also used the bottom edge to line that up on the 3.5. And it's more important to get in the center of those squares than it is to be dead on the 3.5. You can see I've got a bit of a hair difference, but that can be adjusted when you sew them together. And then the same thing on this small piece. I'm going to go through that white one. I can't go to the outside edge because of seam allowance. So I am going to line up that square and then make sure that my piece of my sheet is actually straight. And I'm looking through the ruler to make sure that these line up. This is scrap. We're going to save scraps and do something with them later. When you cut these apart now, you don't need to measure except on the outside edge. In this case, I have a point on that triangle and a point on that one. I just need to cut. And I have a point through these squares, my 2 top ends of the squares. You're going to get 26. I'm not sure why. You're supposed to get 27, but for some reason I'm only getting 26 each time, which is fine because you only need 24. There's a few extras. Still have to figure out why I'm not getting that 27th. But anyway, not critical. Save your triangle scraps. So that's basically how you cut them apart. You just continue going through your whole sheet. Cut your rows and then cut your rows apart. Now there's something I just want to point out to you. These units, when you turn them around, you sometimes get a little piece of a triangle left over. So just cut that off as you're going. Let's see if I have them here. Not there yet. Here's one. And the other thing, this is something I only noticed myself after doing these for 2 years and never noticing this. I have recently noticed, so I want to point that out. Inside some of your seams, you may find a little piece of fabric. You can leave that in or cut half of it close to the thread, and then the other half should pull right off like that. The only thing I ever noticed was that it was sometimes hang up my machine. It would sort of stall when it hits, kind of like that bump. It was only after quite some time that I realized I should probably get rid of that little piece of thickness, and then the sewing together of the blocks of the units goes much easier when I'm making the blocks. So that's how you cut them apart. I'm going to continue with more rows and more rows until my entire sheet is done. And then afterwards, I'm going to show you how to lay out your units to make the 3 variations of the block that we have to make.